Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Okay, in video number 1, we talked about the first pillar of the Beyond OQ program, which was the content, right? And we went through kind of like the idea of going, you can go wide. Once you do one maqam with me, for example, now you can learn other maqamat go sideways, right? So you expand in the width of your knowledge. And then the depth of your practice as well. So the depth of your practice means even within one maqam, how do you express the maqam, what different variations can do, and all these kind of advanced things that take your recitation from this level to now you go more deep and it expands. Actually, when we're talking recitation, we're going upwards, right? We're expanding the depth of what you're able to do in practice, okay? And you can refer to that video if you want to kind of look over again the different topics and advanced stuff as well. That's really fun, transitioning between maqamat, the idea of tasweer al-ma'ani, how do you convey emotion and convey or paint a picture of the meaning as you're reciting, right? Using your voice, using the different maqamat and so on. So it gets to be very fun. But I want to focus here on the two other pillars, coaching and community. And you'll notice in the first video, several times when I'm talking about the content, I end up kind of saying, oh, something about coaching, but let me stop because we'll leave that for the other video, right? The reality is that they're all intertwined, right? When we think of learning maqamat, right, sometimes we'll think of, oh, I need to learn another maqam, which is like a topic, right? So yes, it's a topic, it's content, but it's intertwined with coaching. Why? Because coaching is the student's reliance on, not reliance, that's the wrong word, right? We rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The students benefiting from a mentor or someone who has more experience, right? In this case, myself, right? And there's different levels to that depending on where the student is, okay? If you guys remember, those of you who took Overnight Qari with me, and I'll hop over to this screen. Those of you who took Overnight Qari with me, you would have remembered, maybe you don't remember, that we looked at this thing called the Dreyfus model, okay? Using the Dreyfus model to learn new skills. This comes up somewhere in the middle, like around lesson 4, lesson 5. And it's like this framework or this model for understanding how skill development happens across different things, right? I mean, they have a picture there, which is totally not relevant to what we do here. But, you know, whether someone's learning how to cook or learning how to sew, or they're learning, I don't know, how to like do mountain biking, for example, right? There's different levels to how skill progression happens, right? And if you guys took the course, and you guys can find this article, just search Dreyfus model and you'll find this. This is like a summary article, college info geek dot something. I can't see it, .com. Okay, you can find it. But I want to jump right to the bottom because it talks about how to use the Dreyfus model like in different contexts, right? Like what this means for you, right? And we covered this. If you took the class with me before, Overnight Qari, we covered this in more detail. But you'll see they talk about the different stages and what you have to do to progress. And a lot of these revolve around some sort of mentorship, right? They mentioned mentorship in this stage, but let's go through it. So if somebody's a beginner, right? Someone's a beginner, they're looking for straightforward rules, straightforward tutorials, simple recipes, right? And so that's where you start already to get this like intertwining of content and coaching, right? Why? Because it's not just the content of, okay, this is what a maqam is, or this is this maqam, let's say bayati, these are the notes of bayati, but you're relying on someone who has experience teaching and breaking down the maqam into these simpler patterns so that you can follow those patterns, right? And then based on your level, maybe, I'm working in a session with some beginner students, we'll say, okay, work on these patterns. And you also get focused feedback, right? So a student is doing those patterns and wait a sec, this note is a bit too high, too low, need to change this up, work on, this pattern. You'll get that feedback. Whereas now someone who's more advanced would get a different sort of feedback. And that's where the coaching right away becomes kind of like intertwined with the content, right? So we're covering something content-wise, but you're also getting the coaching that goes with it, right? Once you start to progress, suppose somebody does a maqam, they did hijaz, they can do the basic bottom pattern like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? At this point, you want to start experimenting with these rules or these recipes or these patterns in different contexts. That's where coaching comes into play again, where a student is reciting, right? Often a student at this level might be reciting and they're keeping it simple. Why are they keeping it simple? Because again, this interplay between content and coaching, they might be able to do certain patterns, but in usage, they're sticking to like one pattern or sticking to two patterns, or they find it difficult to take that pattern and now try it in a longer area or try it somewhere that they didn't try before, right? Okay, in class we did amma yatasa'alun. They can do that. Amma yatasa'alun. And now we jump somewhere else. The ayah is longer. What do you do in that situation, right? So that's where coaching comes into play, where you get that guidance, you get that little bit of nudging, a little bit of prompting that helps you to unlock what you yourself are able to do. So coaching is a whole bunch of stuff, right? Coaching is training, right? Back to the content pillar. Coaching is mentorship and guidance. So in these situations, me nudging a student along and giving them that guidance and prompting that helps them to do something that they're already able to do. Maybe they can do the notes. Maybe they could do certain patterns, but when they're reading, they're not doing it. So it's about helping them to unlock that potential within themselves, right? Coaching, as you go through the kind of the different levels to a competent stage, which we can call it for our purposes, intermediate, advanced, right? Once a student can kind of do different patterns, when they're reciting, most of the time, there are things that a student is able to do, but they just don't do it, right? Why? Because of comfort. Maybe they're not used to the sound of their voice if they go super high, right? I had a student, this was recent, right? And the student said something like, they could do that. We were going up in a maqam in Rust. And when we went high to the 8, right, of the maqam, the student was like, they can do it, but it doesn't sound like them. Like they're not used to that sound of themselves, right? They're not used to sounding like that. So that's where, you work with someone and the teacher or the coach can help you to push yourself outside of what's comfortable, outside of what you consider normal for yourself, right? And then lo and behold, you're able to do something that you weren't able to do, 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago. Why? Because someone helped you to unlock that. Okay. Another example, so in this section, when you say competent, you'll see that it says, now you need to start deciding, working with a skilled mentor or teacher can be very valuable. As examples in the books or courses, for example, the patterns we do in the content pillar, right? They're good, but now in application, you might want to add more to it. You might want to combine different patterns. You might want to do different things. I'll give you an example. There was a student, this was last week. Okay, I was working with a student. We were reading from the end of Hashr in Maqam Nahawand. Okay, so the student is reading. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. يسبح لله ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. Patterns wise, in terms of check off these patterns in Maqam Nahawand, the spacings and so on. That's good. That's good. But the student is capable of more. And what's happening in the recitation is that the student is thinking maybe of certain patterns, and that's all they're implementing. So you'll notice, for example, if we say, يُسَبِّحُ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. For those of you who've done Nahawand with me, it's Nahawand. It's good. It sounds, it sounds reasonably good. But in both cases, he's doing like a down pattern. So all it takes from me is to prompt him and say, hey, listen, you just did, what did you do there? Okay. And the student will recognize, oh, wait a sec. I just came down twice. So I'll ask the student, what can you do differently? The student will say, well, I could try going up instead, going up and coming down, right? And through this sort of prompting and feedback and asking questions, as a coach or as a teacher, I'm helping the student to unlock something that they're already able to do and reinforce within themselves that ability to do more, right? So then it becomes something like, instead of يُسَبِّحُ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ, it becomes something like يُسَبِّحُ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Okay? Vocally, in terms of what's required to do this versus that, it's not actually much more, right? But the student, when reciting, will always tend to go for what's comfortable or what's easy or what's safe. And the coach is required to push the student a little bit, give that feedback, give that prompting to help the student unlock, different things that they're already kind of able to do, and to push them to do things that they need to learn how to do. Okay? The last thing, I'll switch back to this. Just me, we don't need this anymore. The last thing when we talk about coaching, not the last thing, there's so many different things to the coaching, but another aspect of it is emotional support. I know you're thinking I don't need emotional support. We all need emotional support, right? I'll tell you something. I had a student. This was a few days ago. He came on the call and right away he started telling me the same story. I can't figure this out. I can't whatever. And it was very like he can't do anything right almost, right? I said to him, make up a name. I don't know, Muhammad, right? I said to him, listen, you're saying the same thing that you say every call, even though, like, when you think about it, over the span of, say, 2 months, you've made incredible progress. Like, this brother, in this case, at the beginning, he couldn't tell up from down. Like, if we had to start from the basics, ear training, figuring out how to go up, how to go down, right? I say, and he says, oh, you're going down, right? He, like beginner, okay? And now he's at the point he's doing different patterns and so on, but he had a specific issue. The specific issue was he can do the patterns, but when he starts to recite, he loses track of where he is in regards to the pattern, okay? And if you guys, I'm putting this on YouTube, so there's got to be some of you watching this who haven't done a course with me, so this might not fully make sense, but for those of you who have done Overnight Qari with me, you'll understand this because we kind of talk about this in the class, right? And it comes up as an issue. So I reminded the brother that, listen, you're able to do the patterns that you weren't able to do like a couple months ago. And I asked him, like, I want you to tell me in your own words what you're able to do. And it was very hard for him to like say, you know what? I'm able to do this. I'm able to do that. Because sometimes we get so caught up with the trouble that we're having or the challenge that we're having that we forget to give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the progress that we've made, right? And that's where, you know, a teacher, somebody who has that zoomed out kind of perspective, can offer that perspective to a student and help the student in their learning journey, right? This comes up for those of you who have taken Overnight Qari. You've seen this Dreyfus model thing that I just shared with you. When I share this Dreyfus model thing with you, for a lot of students, it actually clears up a lot of the sort of mental kind of burden that might come with learning maqamat, because you realize that, hey, wait a sec, there's certain challenges that you're facing around lesson 4 Overnight Qari, when we go from short ayat to longer ayat, or you go from ayat that we've covered in class to a new ayat that you haven't explored. You'll see that reflected in this Dreyfus model thing, right? Meaning, from my perspective as a teacher, I've seen these challenges before. I know what these kind of struggles are, but you, in your perspective as a student, you just see it as like sort of a huge crisis that like, I'm having this problem, or I'm not sure how to figure this out. So sometimes you do need to lean on a teacher, someone with more experience, to be able to help you kind of navigate that. Okay, so that's coaching. And then accountability. You know, I said emotional support is one last thing, but accountability is a huge thing as well. Just being in a program, first of all, where you have other people around you, right? So we're kind of like merging into community now. But you have someone, you know, a teacher that you're kind of like committed to. You're committed to a program. It adds a huge amount, right? Versus somebody trying to do it on their own. They get stuck. They get demoralized. Maybe they don't practice the next day. Maybe they don't practice for a week, right? So it kind of like, sometimes these things snowball. Whereas when you have a community and coaching, right, the two are kind of intertwined, then you have something that you can rely on to keep the momentum going forward. Okay? Community, very quickly, so this video doesn't get too long. Very quickly, community is intertwined with the coaching, right? Community is the actual community space, right? Where you're in a space where you can get this ongoing coaching and support, meaning we're not on a live call, for example, but you're practicing something and you're like, I don't know what's going on. You can record something quickly, post it in the group. Other students can come in and help you. I can come in and help you. So it creates an environment for ongoing coaching and support, right? From myself and from your peers as well, right? Community is, and some people think when learning, they're like, learning is like taking, right? But learning, and when we think of it in the context of community, there's giving as well, right? There's you posting the challenges you're having, which gives an opportunity for others to give a response to that. It gives others a chance to think about the question that you're asking, right? Someone else asks a question, and you maybe you think yourself, I'm at a beginner level, I can't answer questions. But if you put on your teacher hat and you start to think through patterns, or you think through the answer to a question, then all of this is a supportive learning environment, right? What else? In the community, just to be surrounded by people that are on a similar journey with you or doing, this maqamat thing. Sometimes if you're doing maqamat, maybe it might be that you don't really have people in your real physical life that are into maqamat, or you get it. You're listening to a recitation, you hear the reciter do something unique or interesting, right? Maybe if you're just listening on your own, you just keep listening, you finish the clip and that's all, right? When you're in a community, you can share that in the group. You can share it and ask a question. You can share it just for people's interest. Oh, look what he does when he went high in Nahawand over there. Look how he transitioned, or she transitioned from this maqam to this other maqam, right? So when you have this community space, it gives you a place where you can engage in learning that's more unstructured, right? Going back to the content thing, a lot of those things that were at the end of the deck of cards, the advanced things, the usage of maqamat, some of these things we don't cover necessarily as content, but they come up through organic learning, through, here's a clip of Sheikh Minshawi, let's listen, he's doing this, and he went from this maqam to this other maqam, right? Because it relates to the meaning there. So now you start to engage with the idea or the topic of taswir al-ma'ani, but it's happening in a community space rather than a lecture per se, right? It's learning organically, but it's guided through this community, right? I recently, one of the past Overnight Qari students, he asked me a question from one of the recent Overnight Qari classes. He's listening to a recitation with Sheikh, one of the reciters in Medina. The name slips my mind. The father, Khalil al-Qari, if that's his name. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him. And not the father that passed away, but the one that's reciting. He asked me a question. Listen to this thing at this timestamp. He's reciting and he does something here. What is he doing, right? So I answered the question, right? And it's interesting for me to go listen to a reciter. The reason I don't know his name is because I don't actually listen to his recitations very much. So it was interesting for me to listen to that and see, okay, he's doing this as the base maqam. When he's going higher, he's doing these variations or going to this style, touching this other thing. Those are the sorts of things that in a community space, students have the opportunity to ask each other. Students have an opportunity to share something just for interest. I'm listening to this clip. It's interesting, that you might not otherwise have a chance to do. And it creates that supportive learning environment and that accountability that's built into, I'm part of something that I'm learning with a group of students as opposed to just trying to recite on my own. That's that. Barakallahu feekum. We'll leave it there. If you're a past student and you want to reach out to me, you have access to me on Telegram or something, and you have questions, please do that. Or if you have general questions about the program, you know how to find me. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.